You ever had someone so power-hungry, so obsessed with control that they actually tried to kick you out of your own house? Yeah, that happened to me. And when she dragged me into court, the judge's reaction, let's just say it was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. My name's Ethan Brooks, and I live in what most people would call a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood. Cookie-cutter houses, trimmed hedges, mailbox flags that all point the same way. You'd think it's peaceful here, and it was at first. Until I met Karen Whitmore, our HOA president. If you've never had an HOA before, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a woman in her late 50s, always in khaki pants and oversized sunglasses, cruising around in a golf cart with HOA enforcement stickers slapped on the sides like police badges. She treated every mailbox like a military checkpoint. I swear the woman probably timed people's sprinklers for fun. When I first moved in 5 years ago, I followed every rule to the letter, paid my dues, kept my lawn neat, even painted the fence the exact shade they required. But Karen, she could sniff out imaginary violations like a bloodhound. One week she complained about my trash bins being visible from the street. The next, she said my grass was a shade too tall. Once she actually wrote me up because my garden hose wasn't coiled properly. I laughed about it, then thinking she'd eventually get bored and move on to someone else. I was wrong. 6 months ago, my buddy Jake hit a rough patch. He's a firefighter, a good man, but a back injury put him out of work for a while. So I offered him my finished basement, just a room, not a separate unit, nothing fancy. We checked the HOA handbook together. Nothing said we couldn't rent out part of a home. Easy. 3 weeks later, I came home to find a bright orange envelope taped to my front door. Notice of community violation, unauthorized tenancy. You have 14 days to remove all occupants or face eviction proceedings. Eviction from my own house. I thought it was a joke, until I opened my email. There it was, Ethan, as per HOA guidelines. No home may be used as a multi-residential dwelling. Your actions are a direct violation of our community standards. You have 2 weeks to comply or vacate. Vacate. My own home. I fired back instantly. Karen, my friend, is renting a finished basement. I live here. I own this property. I'm in full compliance with every city and HOA rule. She replied 5 minutes later, "We'll see what the board says about that." And when Karen said the board, she meant her little trio of retirees who nodded at everything she said like bobbleheads. A week later, I was invited, well summoned, to a special HOA hearing. I walked in to find Karen sitting behind a folding table like she was the Supreme Court judge herself. She had her binder, her coffee, and that smug smile that said she already knew the verdict. "Mr. Brooks." She started, "We've reviewed your case and determined your property use is non-compliant with community standards. You are to terminate all tenancy and restore your property to single-family use." I kept my voice calm. "You realize I am the family living there, right?" She didn't blink. "The board has made its decision. Failure to comply will result in legal action, including possible removal from the premises." That's when I smiled, though inside my blood was boiling. "Okay, Karen, do what you have to do, but make sure your paperwork's perfect." Because what she didn't know was that I documented everything: emails, letters, meeting notes, all of it. 2 weeks later, a certified letter showed up. HOA versus Ethan Brooks. They had actually filed an eviction in county court. I had to read it twice. They were accusing me of endangering the community's integrity. Integrity. Jake works nights at the fire station and spends weekends fixing bikes for kids in the neighborhood. Yeah, real menace to society. That night I sat at my kitchen table just staring at the papers. For a second I felt completely defeated. Maybe I should just let Jake move out. Maybe fighting this wasn't worth the stress. Maybe Karen was right. Maybe I had missed something. I remember thinking, what if I really am the problem? But then I looked around my house, the walls I'd painted myself, the mortgage I'd paid every month without fail, and I realized if I let her do this to me, she'll do it to someone else. No, not today. The next morning I called an attorney, Melissa Kane. She specialized in HOA disputes and had this calm, razor-sharp confidence that could make a shark flinch. I told her everything. She laughed. They're trying to evict a homeowner from his own property. Oh, this'll be fun. She filed a motion to dismiss and requested a hearing. A few weeks later, we walked into court. Karen was already there, front row, clipboard in hand, like she was about to win a gold medal in micromanagement. Next to her sat the HOA's lawyer, a guy who looked like he hadn't slept since Nixon was president. When the judge called our case, Karen strutted up to the front like she owned the place. "Your Honor, the defendant. Mr. Brooks is in direct violation of our community covenants by operating a multi-tenant dwelling." The judge interrupted her. "Hold on. You're saying you're trying to evict a homeowner from his own property?" Karen blinked. "Yes, Your Honor. His actions breach our HOA bylaws." The judge leaned back in his chair, clearly stunned. "Does your HOA have the legal authority to enforce evictions?" Karen's lawyer jumped in, stammering. "Your Honor, while not typical, our association has the right to enforce compliance through legal remedy." The judge sighed. "And that remedy is not eviction. That's a landlord-tenant issue, not an HOA matter." I bit my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Then Melissa stood, calm, poised. "Your Honor, my client's property use fully complies with city ordinances and the recorded HOA covenants. There's no clause restricting internal tenancy. Furthermore, we have evidence of harassment and malicious enforcement by the HOA president." Karen's lawyer objected, but Melissa handed the judge a thick folder, emails, photos, everything. The judge flipped through the pages until he stopped at one particular email. Karen's words in black and white. "We'll make him wish he never moved here." The room went silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. The judge looked over his glasses. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you write this?" Karen stammered. That was taken out of context." He closed the folder. "I think I've heard enough." Then he turned to me. "Mr. Brooks, you are free to continue living in your home. This case is dismissed with prejudice." Karen's face turned bright red. "And as for the HOA," the judge added, "consider this a warning. Harassing homeowners with baseless claims can result in legal consequences. Do I make myself clear?" Karen just nodded, speechless. When the gavel hit, it felt like thunder rolling through the room. She stormed out, muttering something under her breath, but I didn't care. I'd won. Or so I thought. Outside the courtroom, Melissa turned to me with a smirk. "We're not done yet. We're filing a counterclaim for harassment and defamation. Let's make sure she never pulls this stunt again." And we did. Within a month, word spread around the neighborhood. Turns out I wasn't the only one Karen had bullied. People started sharing their own stories, ridiculous citations, bogus fines, threats over mailbox paint colors. The HOA board held an emergency election. Karen was voted out, replaced by a new guy named Tom. First thing he did was show up at my door with a box of donuts and an apology letter. "We're really sorry for how this went down," he said. "The board's decided to reimburse your legal fees." I accepted, not because of the money, but because it felt like peace had finally returned to the neighborhood. A few weeks later, on a bright Saturday morning, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee when I saw her Karen driving by in a beat-up sedan, not her precious golf cart anymore. She slowed down, glaring at me over her sunglasses. I just smiled, lifted my mug, and said, "Morning, Karen." Still patrolling the neighborhood. She sped off without a word, and that was it. The end of the storm. The HOA stopped acting like a private dictatorship. Jake still rents the basement, still helps mow lawns for the older couple next door. People actually talk to each other now. We host barbecues, pool nights, even holiday events, things that never existed under Karen's rule. Sometimes when I drive past the courthouse, I think about that moment when the judge raised his eyebrow and realized how absurd her case was. I can still see it, the half smile on his face, like justice itself was amused. And every time I remember, I can't help but laugh. Because in the end, I didn't just keep my house, I kept my dignity. You don't have to shout to win. Just stay calm, document everything, and let the law deal with the Karens of the world. Because sometimes justice doesn't just win, it smiles while doing it.